it this way suggests that he may not be in complete control of what's going on. We're concerned for his emotional and physical safety.
Big development. What does it mean? Joining me now is Benjamin Crump, attorney for Trayvon Martin's family. Ben, thanks for being here. Zimmerman lawyers are out. Is that a surprising press conference? And what do you make of this development?
It is very surprising, Reverend Sharpton, and it is a big development because it causes great concern for the family of Trayvon Martin. His mother, Sabrina Fulton, and his father, Tracy Martin, asked me, they said, you know, does this mean they don't know where this guy's at? They are concerned that George Zimmerman, the man who killed their son, Reverend Sharpton, is unaccounted for. His lawyers can't account for his whereabouts. He won't return their calls. And their word, that is he a flight risk? Will he ever be brought to justice if and when he is charged for killing their son? Those are some very serious questions that they have.
Now, are you concerned about that? I mean, you now have a guy who has no legal representation. There's not an office of the court in touch with the prosecutor's office that can claim responsibility for him.
Yeah, and Reverend Sharpton, what you just told America through the series of interviews with his lawyers, he's not in the state of Florida. Nobody knows where this guy is at. He's unaccounted for. The killer of Trayvon Martin is unaccounted for. And that is terribly troubling for his mother and father, who simply have been asking that he be brought to justice. Had he been arrested from the first day when he killed their unarmed teenager, then we won't be dealing with this situation. But now we are 43 days and counting and no arrest. And we have all this we have to deal with now.
Now, the calls to the prosecutor, isn't that unusual to you? Have you ever heard of that before?
Well, the one thing I do agree with his former lawyers, you don't talk to the prosecutors or the police. You have your lawyers do it. And so it's very surprising that he will call himself, but you know, we've said George Zimmerman is a loose cannon. Our legal team was talking earlier, and this is further evidence that he's a loose cannon, Reverend Sharpton, and that he is very unpredictable. So we're really worried about him being a flight risk. Again, the killer of Trayvon Martin is unaccountable for. Nobody knows where the killer of Trayvon Martin is.
Now, and I might add, the prosecutor's office told them they are not going to talk to him, potential defendant or suspect, wouldn't talk to him, but to think he called them and then called back again. And the lawyers, as you said, stated very clearly they've lost contact with him. They don't think he would leave the country, but they don't know where he is. They haven't talked to him since Sunday. But he's far from Florida, to quote them exactly.
Yeah, and Reverend Sharpton, as I understand it, they never met him. So how can they say they don't think he's going to leave the country? It is really troubling when you think about the person who killed your child is unaccounted for, and the question is, will he ever be brought to justice?
Now, let me ask you this, Mr. Crump. What does this do also to a lot of what we've heard about Mr. Zimmerman's side of the story from his father and these lawyers? Here's a guy that's told different sides of the story, who all of a sudden just quits talking to his lawyers, starts calling the prosecutors, starts calling TV hosts. I mean, does that not speak a lot to how his story may or may not have a lot of credibility? I mean, wouldn't the prosecutor have to look at the value of his word now?
Well, I think, Reverend Sharpton, you are absolutely right. They should look at everything. They should look at all those 911 calls he made before Trayvon Martin's call, over 46 calls, and about 75% of them was dealing with African-American males as being suspicious, and then you take this unpredictable, irrational conduct into play, and you want to look at all of that when you look at the totality of the evidence. And I keep going back to it, Reverend Sharpton, because this unpredictable person who killed Trayvon Martin is unaccounted for.
No,
and that is so troubling.
We cannot lose sight of that. Ben Crump, stand by for 1 second, please. I want to bring in Catherine Cryer. She's a former district court judge and a prosecutor in Texas and an award-winning journalist. She's also a best-selling author with the new book, Patriot Acts, What Americans Must Do to Save the Republican. Also with us is John Burris, an experienced criminal defense attorney. Thank you both for being here tonight. Let me start with you, Catherine. How would this development how could this development affect the case?
Well, very dramatically. Certainly, if either he were to literally disappear or represent himself, and certainly if he is communicating with the prosecutor saying, "Don't worry about those lawyers, I'm really sort of on my own," he seems to be asserting self-representation. But I think the prosecution, I'd be surprised if the prosecutors, investigators with law enforcement don't know where he is. First off, the lawyers had made it clear they knew he had left the state. I think they probably had an idea before losing contact on Sunday. Besides that, between landlines, other means of keeping tabs on people, cell phones, I wager law enforcement has a pretty good idea of where he is. My gut says this sort of irrational behavior, you do wonder about, which could mean danger to others or danger to himself. That could present a twist and possible outcome in this case, which is not something anyone wants.
John Burris, you're a defense attorney. How does this sound to you? I mean, have you ever had this kind of experience or heard of this kind of a person that is being looked at as such a serious crime and they just go disappear on their defense attorneys?
Well, not so much disappear, but certainly bizarre behavior does happen. Sometimes defendants, you take them as you find them, have all kind of sociopathic type issues. This is a case where a guy appears to have some real mental issues here, maybe it's post-traumatic, whatever, but it is not surprising given what we knew about him at the outset and given what he said. I think you could expect to have this kind of irrational behavior. What I'm surprised would be that the lawyers would quit at this stage, given that they've only had a day or two where he's made some statements that are kind of
but they've
unusual.
Never met him. I mean, the lawyers have never met him.
Well, even so.
For whatever reasons, we don't know how bizarre the whole situation was. They were dealing with him by phone. I mean, maybe they said this whole thing is too bizarre.
It is bizarre, but I'm just saying the lawyers are dealing with the parent, or they're dealing with him, unless he told them definitively that he does not want to represent. I think the lawyers probably should have stayed around a little bit longer and not made such a big announcement right now, unless something dramatically has happened that maybe even contradicts some of the information they've been talking about. Yeah. That is to say, he's told them one story, now he's telling them another. Yeah. They're in the lawyer's position, they're in an equitable position.
That may be possible, and they don't want to give that up to portray the confidence that they may have gotten some contradictory information.
Yeah, John, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. I agree with you completely.
Yeah,
when I was listening to the press conference, I thought we're not getting the full story, and probably not because the lawyers don't want to tell it, but because there are obviously limitations because they have been representing this man. But something more had to occur, because if they lost contact about 36 hours ago, they're not going to walk away unless he either fired them, which I think they probably would have told us if he had specifically and directly fired them, or if there wasn't something else going on. So I'm kind of...
Well, they said that he told the prosecutor's office they were just his legal advisors, they weren't his lawyers.
But that's not the kind of dismissal you need to remove yourself from a case. You need to talk to your client. You need to know that you're off the case. I wonder if something else that didn't concern them about sort of the ethics, grievance committee issues about their representation, whether it was the way the website was set up, something that may be going on financially, or something between themselves and the client that's much more, egregious than what we've heard from.
John, could this affect the special prosecutor in terms of expediting a decision on moving?
I think it could and probably should, assuming she has the evidence that she wants. I mean, obviously, there's a strategic question of when she's going to do it. But the reason being, I think it's important now, if there's some reason to believe he is gone and you don't necessarily know where it is, you want to get an arrest warrant, you want to get a complaint, arrest warrant out, and you want to get this person found as quickly as you can. On the other hand, if she waits, that might suggest she still she's not that comfortable with the evidence. And it may be they do know where it is, but if she doesn't, I think she has to file this complaint very soon, get an arrest warrant out, and get this person found, because he could hurt himself, he could hurt someone else, and there's real trouble. I think that everyone should be appreciative of the fact that this guy is bizarre, which means he could do harm to himself or someone else.
Let me go back to Attorney Crump. Attorney Crump, the special prosecutor said she was not going to go through the grand jury. She dismissed that yesterday, which took first-degree murder off the table in the state of Florida, but she can indict in second-degree murder or homicide, negligent manslaughter. What do you feel about what the options are now?
Well, a couple of things about that, Reverend Sharpton. She can always modify those charges if there's evidence that come to light that warrant a first-degree murder charge. She'll simply have to take it back to the grand jury. That's not unprecedented. Furthermore, we thought that it was somewhat a positive thing that she did not convene the grand jury, because we often say in the legal community, when you take a matter to a grand jury, you really are taking it there to let it die, where the prosecutor can wash their hands and absolve themselves of any liability for a failure to arrest and just put it on the jury and say this was a private proceeding, we presented everything, and they said there's not enough evidence. So we always thought that as a passing the buck or a cop-out to go to the grand jury. So we commend and applaud Special Prosecutor Angela Corey for saying, I'm going to make the decision whether to arrest or not arrest. It's going to be my decision. And we've always maintained there's enough evidence to make this decision to simply arrest them, not to convict them, but arrest them. The family only wants simple justice. They don't want anything else.
And he could face second-degree murder, which is 25 years to life, manslaughter 5 to 30 years, aggravated battery with a firearm 3 years to 30. All of that by her charged without a grand jury, even in the state of Florida. My view has been from the beginning there needs to be an arrest. Can't say there needs to be a conviction. We don't know the charge. We don't know the evidence. But there needs to be an arrest. I think it needs to be an immediate arrest now. A man sets up a bank account and all of a sudden you can't find him. They may say they think he won't flee. I don't know that. I think he should be arrested. Martin, the family, Attorney Ben Crump, see you in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. Catherine Cryer and John Burris, thank you both for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're back with much more on the breaking news today. Zimmerman's lawyers quit. So where is George Zimmerman? Stay with us.